Hello, today we will recap a horror thriller movie, in which a couple adopts a little girl who is not innocent as they thought. Spoilers ahead, watch out and enjoy. The movie opens with Kate and her husband John, arriving at a hospital as Kate goes into labor. While Kate is taken into the operating room, John handles the paperwork. Tragically, Kate experiences complications and wakes up to the devastating news that her baby has not survived. The scene transitions, and we see Kate waking up at home, still grappling with the emotional aftermath of her loss. She examines the scar on her belly and takes medication. Later, Kate visits Max's school to pick her up. Max is deaf and she uses a hearing device and sign language to communicate. Then we catch a glimpse of Kate's musical talent as she plays the piano and composes music at home. During bedtime, Kate reads Max a story, which interestingly revolves around the child who died. Max inquires if she will have a new sister through adoption. Before retiring for the night, Kate takes another tablet. In bed with John, they have a heartfelt conversation about the adoption. Kate has made her decision, and they both agree to proceed with the process. At a later time, Kate and John arrive at an orphanage, where they are greeted by Sister Abigail, who encourages them to explore and see if they find a connection with any of the children. Kate remains on the first floor of the orphanage, observing the little girls playing, while John heads to the second floor. Intrigued by a girl's beautiful singing, John enters a room where he finds Esther engrossed in her painting. Esther captivates John with an amazing story about her artwork, and just then, Kate and Sister Abigail join them. John introduces them, and the three engage in a warm conversation. Esther reveals that people usually avoid talking to her because she's different, making them realize her longing for connection. Impressed by Esther's charm, they discuss the possibility of adopting her with Sister Abigail. Abigail shares that Esther is originally from Russia, and her guardians tragically passed away in a house fire upon bringing her to the US. Despite her past, Abigail finds Esther to be a wonderful girl, and Kate wholeheartedly agrees. 3 weeks later, Kate and John return to the orphanage to pick up Esther, bidding farewell to Sister Abigail. In the car, Kate starts teaching Esther sign language to facilitate communication. As they arrive home, Max eagerly welcomes Esther, and the new addition introduces herself, displaying her curiosity about Max's hearing abilities. Kate explains that Max can hear just enough to read people's lips. Upon arriving home, they are greeted by Grandma Barbara and Daniel, Max's brother. That night, Esther wakes up and goes to Max's room. Meanwhile, Kate and John are in an intimate moment when the girls knock on the door, asking to sleep in their bed. Esther insists on sleeping next to John. The following day, Max and Esther play on a frozen lake, causing Kate to rush out, warning them against the danger. At the same time, Daniel plays with a paintball gun and accidentally injures a bird. Esther and Max approach, and Esther takes matters into her own hands, ending the bird's suffering with a large rock. Later, Kate teaches Esther to play the piano and gives her a scrapbook. Curious, Esther asks about the baby Kate lost. Kate shares the heartbreaking story and shows her the place where they scattered the ashes. After dinner, Kate and John believe the kids are asleep and become intimate in the kitchen. Suddenly, Esther appears, catching them off guard. The next morning, Kate approaches Esther to discuss the incident. Unfazed, Esther paints and says she knows about it what they doing, and uses the F word. Kate and John discuss the situation, and consider taking her to a therapist for further evaluation. Later that night, to Kate's surprise, Esther flawlessly plays the piano. Curious about Esther's deception, Kate asks why she pretended not to know how to play. Esther candidly reveals that it was all a calculated act to manipulate Kate. Tensions escalate as Kate and John engage in a heated argument about Esther, and their emotions run high. Unbeknownst to them, Esther listens to their heated dispute from the other room, likely plotting her next move. One day, Sister Abigail pays a visit to Kate and John's house. During their conversation, Abigail expresses concerns about Esther's behavior, mentioning instances where she might have harmed other children in the past. Unbeknownst to the adults, Esther overhears the conversation and becomes fearful of being taken away. Seeking help, she enlists Max to assist her in avoiding any potential threats. In response to Abigail's concerns, Kate suggests taking Esther to see a therapist, a decision that John agrees with. However, Esther has a sinister plan in mind. She manipulates Max into retrieving the keys to the treehouse, but her true intention is to access John's safe, where she finds a gun. With calculated precision, Esther removes most of the bullets from the revolver, leaving only one inside. She terrorizes Max by pointing the gun at her, inducing immense fear. Later, as Abigail leaves the house in her car, Esther takes Max to a bridge, intending to scare her to the point where she won't dare return. Esther pushes Max onto the street, causing a near accident with Abigail's car. The car crashes, and Esther takes advantage of the situation to attack Abigail with a hammer, killing her. Having committed the dreadful act, Esther manipulates Max into helping her hide the evidence in the treehouse. She coerces Max with threats, instilling fear that they will both be held responsible for Abigail's death. Daniel sees them climb down the treehouse, but Esther sees him too. That night, Esther confronts Daniel in his room with a scalpel to silence him from revealing anything. Later, John and Kate take Esther to see the therapist, Dr. Browning, who engages in a discussion about Esther while she waits outside. The therapist surprisingly asserts that there is no issue with Esther, shifting the focus onto Kate, suggesting that her feelings of inadequacy as a mother might be influencing her perception of Esther's behavior. John aligns with the therapist's view, causing further frustration for Kate. Feeling concerned and determined to uncover the truth about Esther's past, Kate conducts online research on disturbed children. Driven by her persistence, Kate decides to contact the orphanage in Russia from where Esther was adopted. To her shock, she learns that there are no records of Esther's existence before her arrival in the US. The following day, Kate questions her children about Esther's behavior, but they lie to her in fear. That night, Esther enters the kitchen and presents Kate with some flowers, claiming they were picked from the same location, where Kate's daughter's ashes were scattered. Kate becomes visibly upset and tries to confront Esther, but John intervenes. That same night, Esther deliberately injures her hand in the garage. When John tends to her, he discovers that her arm has been broken. After returning from the doctor's appointment, John is seen tucking Esther into their bed when Kate walks in. He questions her about what happened, but Kate denies having hurt Esther severely. Feeling overwhelmed and distraught, Kate goes to a liquor store and purchases 2 bottles of wine. She attempts to cope with her emotions by drinking, but later decides to pour the remaining wine down the drain. The next morning, Kate drives the kids to school, and a small incident occurs when Daniel's bag rips. As Kate goes to help him, Esther seizes the opportunity and puts the car in drive with Max still inside. Kate desperately chases after the moving car, until it comes to a stop in the snow. Later that night, Dr. Browning visits their house, and Kate insists that she had put the car in park, believing that Max is covering for Esther's actions. John finds the second wine bottle, which Esther had discovered. Kate attempts to explain her side of the wine incident, but her family remains unconvinced. John accuses her of manipulation and gives her an ultimatum, demanding that she seek rehab within a week, or he will leave with the kids. Meanwhile, Esther threatens Max, warning her not to reveal anything or else she'll shoot their mom. Later, Daniel enters Max's room, and she confides in him about Abigail and the treehouse. He agrees to retrieve the items from the treehouse, unaware that Esther is eavesdropping on their conversation. The following day, Kate decides to investigate further and retrieves Esther's Bible. To her astonishment, she finds pictures of men hidden inside the plush toy. She notices the word Sarn Institute in the Bible and quickly searches online for more information. To her horror, she discovers that the Sarn Institute is a mental hospital, not an orphanage. Meanwhile, Daniel sneaks out of the house to retrieve the items from the treehouse, unknowingly followed by Esther. Once there, Esther starts pouring fuel over the evidence and sets it on fire. She locks Daniel inside the burning treehouse. Desperately calling for his mother, Daniel climbs onto the roof, pleading for help while facing a life-threatening predicament. However, Kate remains unaware of the dire situation unfolding with her son, as she is preoccupied with her investigation of Esther's true identity. As Daniel falls onto a wooden beam and then slips to the ground, Esther watches him intently. Kate becomes aware of the fire and rushes to the scene. Just as Esther is about to harm Daniel with a rock, Max bravely pushes her away, and Kate arrives in the nick of time to prevent further harm. All of them end up in the hospital, and the doctor reveals that Daniel has a serious neck injury and may not remember the events. Kate, filled with anger and concern, confronts Esther and reacts by slapping her. Amidst the chaos, Kate misses an important phone call. Later, Kate wakes up and immediately inquires about Daniel's condition. She pleads with John to keep Esther away from Max, and she decides to stay overnight in the hospital. At home, Esther descends the stairs, dressed up like an adult, and sits next to John, who is taken aback by her behavior. Esther tries to kiss him, but he recoils, explaining that he doesn't have romantic feelings for her as he does for Kate. John instructs Esther to go to her room, but she defiantly tells him not to treat her like a child. He warns her that he will contact the orphanage about her situation. Esther retreats to her room and breaks down in tears. Meanwhile, Kate receives a call from a doctor at the Sarn Institute who recognizes Esther. Kate learns that Esther has a rare hormone disorder that causes her to look like a child while being an adult woman. The doctor reveals Esther's violent past, and that she has been responsible for multiple deaths. In a state of confusion, Kate rushes back home to confront Esther. Back at the house, Esther destroys her room and removes her makeup, revealing her true appearance as an adult. John comes to check on her, and discovers disturbing paintings all over her walls. Kate frantically calls John as she rushes home, but the power outage disrupts their communication. She immediately contacts the police while John searches the dark house. Suddenly, Esther attacks and fatally stabs him, leaving him incapacitated. Max witnesses the horrifying scene and becomes Esther's next target. Kate's urgency causes her to crash her car into the house. She rushes upstairs to find John, then realizes Max is in danger and desperately searches for her. She searches her room for her, but when she can't find her, she goes into the bathroom. Esther suddenly shoots her. Kate manages to hide in her bedroom outside wall, evading Esther's pursuit. Meanwhile, Max hides in the garden while Esther closes in on her. From the glass roof, Kate witnesses Esther. With quick thinking, Kate breaks the glass roof, falling onto Esther. After this, Kate picks up the gun and carries Max away, leaving Esther behind. As Kate and Max walk into the forest, the police arrive and enter the house, but Esther is not there. Suddenly, Esther appears, chasing after them with a knife. The mother and daughter fall onto the frozen lake and a struggle ensues, with Esther relentlessly attacking Kate. In a desperate move, Max picks up the gun and shoots, shattering the ice. Both fall into the freezing water and continue their struggle. Kate eventually gains the upper hand and incapacitates Esther. As Kate tries to crawl out of the icy water, Esther clings to her, pleading not to let her die. In self-defense, Kate kicks Esther back into the freezing lake, putting an end to the terrifying ordeal.